Good evening, my fellow Toastmasters. Welcome all to the second session of the contest prep that we need to go through for the District 57 contest season in the year 2024. This is Ananda, and I am one of the co-chairs along with Venkat Raman, who is with us. And we are also joined today by Hans Thoma, who is the chief judge of the district contest team. We have shared the screen here with you today. Right now it is in front of you. And we had the first session a couple of days ago on December 10th. Today is the second session of one of the modules. Next slide, please, Hans. Let me begin by some of the highlights of the coming up session of the coming up speech and evaluation contest in 2024. Next slide, please. When we talk about the speech contest and the evaluation contest, we are just talking about them, the speech contest and the evaluation contest. Now, what I want to say here is that both of them are two separate events. They are not the same events. However, they can be held on the same day, one after the other, at the same time, one after the other. If you do that, you will have more people joining, and also you can have the same personnel, the same sergeant at arms, the same timer, the same ballot counter to cover both of the events. Let me also stress here that this is not a humorous speech contest. This is not a table topics contest. This is also not a tall tales contest. Next slide, please. As I just said a few minutes ago, these are two independent contests and they can be held together or separately on the same day at different times. Next slide, please. This is the golden Bible of the whole event. And I will suggest all of you to get it. It is free. You can download it. At the end of this, when we hands take over, and at the end of the meeting, we will share the PDF with all of you, and you can just download it and go through it. Read it not once, but at least twice. It is the Bible of everything. And one beautiful thing about this is that it gives the latest updates to the 2024 contest. The updates, the changes in 2024. Next slide, please, Hans. We will be having 4 modules. The training session will be in 4 modules. That is what is in our plan. Module 1, which is today also the second part of module 1. It is the planning and recruitment part. And this includes the eligibility criteria for the different roles and also something known as defensive planning. How do we plan in the best way so that things don't get into a bad state later on? Module 2, we will cover the flow of the contest and the key tools used. Now, something I just missed. Module 1. Today is the second session of Module 1. The first session of Module 1, we had it on last Sunday. Today is the second session. Both of the sessions, the first session and the second session, are basically the same. Today is the second session, the Module 2, which is the flow of the contest and the key tools to be used, which includes some training on tech hosting and ballot management. We will be having the second event sometime in early January. We don't have the date yet, but we'll sometime in early January, we will let all of you know. Next slide, please, Hans. The third module will be sometime in the third week of I think second or third of maybe towards the end of January. In that third module, we will cover the judging process. And when I say the judging process, it includes the balloting process, how the chief judge works, how the judges interact with the chief judge, the role of the tie-breaking judge, and the ballot counters. All of these folks, all of these people are necessary for the successful outcome of the events. All of these. The last session, the module 4, which is we are still planning, it will be held sometime, I think, in the early February, just before the area contest starts. See, the club contest should be over by the end of January, should be over technically. But early February, at the second February, I think, the area contest starts. The fourth module, which is we are still working on it, will be done sometime in early February. Next slide, please. So again, as we said, module 1, which we today is the second session of module 1. Module 2, January, early January. Module 2, I think second or third week of January. Module 4, sometime early February. Next session, please. Next slide. So coming to the details, we have Hans here. He is our chief judge, and I request him to take over. Hans, the stage is yours.
Okay. So the first detail we wanted to talk about is how awesome speech contests are and benefits they give to everyone. Because I'm assuming most of you are area directors, and we want you to communicate these benefits to everyone and really try to motivate people to step up and compete. Contestants will gain much more rigorous speaking experience. Volunteers will gain experience in leadership roles. And, the club itself will enhance their visibility and possibly assist their recruitment. Because if they hold a contest, it's going to make them stand out. So as area and division directors, we really would like you to motivate those clubs to, think about having a contest. And we'll talk about what happens when they do. As Ananda said, we have these dates laid out for the different levels of the contests. And that's important because there needs to be a break between each level of contest so that people can prepare for the next one. The district contest, as you can see, is on May 11th. And that means that the division contest should be complete a month before, which would be April 11th. And that gives the division finalists enough time to prepare for that district contest. Many of you have already been scheduling your contests, and if you have not, please follow these dates to put your contest on the calendar. Let's talk about the fact that even though club contests are optional, each area must have a contest. And the reason for that is simply because a contestant cannot skip a level. For example, if they've won their club contest, they cannot skip the arrow level. They have to proceed in an orderly fashion. The good news is, the third bullet point here is good news because if you're an area director, you're allowed to combine forces with another area to have a dual contest. Let's talk about what that looks like. A dual contest is one where you see in the second point there, the contestants from the first area would speak first, then the ballots would be collected, and then the second area would speak. That way, the same judges can judge both areas, and you would only need one test speaker. So that has been done successfully for the last 2 or 3 years that I'm aware of. So it's a very viable option for those of you who want to, like perhaps you have a very small area and you're concerned about getting enough people. This can make it easier for you. Does anyone have any questions about that process? Okay, moving on. Oh, wait.
My
Sometimes I don't see the chat message thing. Okay, so we had a couple questions. One is from Judy, is the district contest going to be online, in person, or hybrid? That's going to be hybrid. Yeah, assuming enough people say they will come, then they will rent a room. So that's what they said. It's going to be a hybrid. Second question is, yeah. So area and division contests must be online, just remote only, online only. But the district contest supposedly will be hybrid. So coming back to this slide, let's talk about how to schedule an area or division contest. Typically, we recommend 6 or 6:30 on a weeknight, but a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon is also. As I mentioned before, look at the calendar on the district website and choose a date. For example, your area contest should be about at least 2 weeks before your division contest. So talk with your division director and make sure that there's enough gap there. We also request that there not be more than 2 area contests on any date, because that makes it more difficult for everyone to volunteer. And also an area contest should not be on the same day as a division contest, because that makes it more difficult for the division contest to recruit people. So, and there's a link at the bottom of the slide to submit your date to the calendar. Okay. So, okay. Let's talk a bit about contestant eligibility. This should be old news to some of you, but let's just review it. If you want to be a speech contestant, you must have level 2 of pathways or a DTM. However, this is waived if they are a charter member of a new club that launched less than a year before the contest. Now, evaluation contestants do not have to have any requirements at all. They don't have to have level 2 of pathway. They don't have to have anything. They can even be a brand new member. Another eligibility point is they must be a paid member of a club in good standing. That means their club must have 8 or more members. It doesn't need to be the same club they originally competed at, but it does need to be a club within the same area or division. Now, here's why I say that. Many people belong to multiple clubs. So if they won the club contest, they won their contest at a club, but then they quit that club for some reason. They stopped being a member. They need to be a member of a club in the same area in order to attend the area contest. And they need to be a member of a club in the division to attend that division contest. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, regarding payments, everyone who wants to be a competitor now must have paid by, they must be paid. So either they met the September 31st deadline or they paid after it. It doesn't matter. As long as they're paid as of before your club contest date, they are eligible. Now, when March 31st happens, that's another deadline. So a lot of people miss that deadline, but that's okay as long as they pay before the next contest. Let's say that your division contest is on April 5th. Someone could miss the deadline on March 31st, but that's okay as long as they pay and they can provide proof of that payment before that division contest. And the reason this is important is because the next slide here, contestants have to maintain their eligibility throughout the season. And if at any level it is discovered that someone was ineligible, they will be disqualified. So, for example, if someone shows up at the division contest on April 5th and it was discovered that they did not pay, they only paid on April 6th, then they will be disqualified. So it goes without saying, you cannot compete at a contest and then pay the next day. You have to be a paid member, or else someone could raise a protest and get that person disqualified. What kind of people cannot compete? Unfortunately, if you are an area director, you cannot compete. And that is because Toastmasters International says that district officers cannot compete. And district officers include the trio members. It includes the finance manager, the public relations manager, as well as area and division directors. Now, if you are simply a chairholder of some kind of chair position, then you can compete because that's not considered an officer role. Second bullet point, anyone who is planning to campaign for an elected position next year cannot compete. This includes division directors. So let's say you are an area director this year and you hope to be a division director next year. You should not compete, because if you want to be a candidate for a division director next year, that's an elected position, and they don't want anyone to compete while being a candidate, because that's a conflict of interest. Any questions about that?
I have a question.
Yes.
So if I'm a member in a different district, can I still compete in their contest? I'm an area director here, though.
You're an area director here, and you want to compete in a different district.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll check on that. I don't know. Okay. Here's some good news. Those of you who belong to multiple clubs can compete at each of those clubs. However, let's say that you win at more than one club. You can only compete in one area contest. So here's the thing. Let's say that you're at the club level and you win the speech contest and you win the evaluation contest, maybe at the same club or another club. You could theoretically be a speech contestant at one area and an evaluation contestant as well. But you cannot compete in more than one speech contest or evaluation contest, even if it's in a different district. Okay. So I'm assuming that most of you are area directors as opposed to people who hope to compete. But I would recommend passing these slides on to club presidents or VPEs, because it's only a few weeks away before clubs will start having contests or at least nominating speakers, right? And they really need to know what the rules are. So we'll be passing this PDF to you.
Great. Thank you.
here's a question we often get is that if you're a contestant, can you also be a volunteer at that contest? Well, the good news is, yes, they can, but it can't be the same contest they're competing at. So let's say you're a speech contestant. You can volunteer at someone else's contest, but not the one that you're competing at. That just wouldn't make sense. Second bullet point. There's a special rule here in the second bullet point about judging. Once a contestant advances beyond the club level, they cannot be a judge, any kind of judge, even if that contest is in a different division or district. Why do they say that? Well, TMI believes that if you're a contestant, they don't want you to have any influence over any other contest. Because theoretically, you could vote in favor of the weaker contestants because you think that will give you a better chance. So they don't want you to do that. So there's a lot, as you can see, there's a lot of complexity here. And we hope you keep a copy of these to pass them on to make sure everyone understands.
And Sam, I have a question for the last slide.
Sure.
So if we have a contestant who's competing in the evaluation contest, can they compete in the speech? I mean, can they help out or volunteer in the speech contest if they're not participating in that?
Yes. So if you're saying if speech and evaluation contests have different volunteers, then yes, they can do that.
Okay.
Most contests, they have the same volunteers for both, but if you have them split apart on different nights, that's okay.
Okay. What happens if they're on the same night? They cannot, though?
That's okay too.
That's okay too?
I just haven't seen it done like that.
Okay. Gotcha.
But they could.
Okay, perfect.
But the contesting from the club, they can able to be judges with a different club, right?
At the club level, at the club level, they can. But you see there in the second bullet point, it says once they advance beyond. So you could be a speech contestant at one club and judge at another club, but you cannot judge at an area contest.
Okay.
Could they be in another area? A club in another area?
To judge?
Like being a judge in a club in another area.
Yeah, I think it's what you meant by it. Look like on the division, right? So you are in division 57, and then no, the division D, and then if you have the area like 12 or 13, maybe you can go over compete with the other judges from another the area, right? That's what you meant?
Yeah, for example, like this is the area 13, let's say that, and then the club is in the area 13, and then the contestant is in another club in another area, let's say that 14, and could that contestant be invited to be a judge in the club in the area 13?
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Judges, speakers, anyone can judge at the club level, even contestants.
Hans, I just wanted to clarify the club contest judging because it doesn't make complete sense to me. If a contestant in a particular club, you're saying, can judge in another club in that same area, won't that criteria also apply where they could mark someone down because they will be competing against each other at the area contest?
Well, they can judge at another club's contest, but they cannot judge at the area contest.
Right, but if suppose you have club A and B in an area, you're saying contestant from club A can be a judge in club B, but won't that criteria apply where they could, not purposely, but inadvertently they can mark somebody down because they'll become, if especially they win, suppose they win this club contest, they are the winners. They're going to the area level. Won't they want to mark the club B down because they're competing with each other at the area? So that doesn't make sense to me from a judging point of view.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Is this there's nothing in the rule book about the defense.
Okay, all right. It's better though to have completely contestant not being judges in that same area, I think. I mean, in the club level also, I would think from a club point of view.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's true. And the more judges you have, the more accurate the results will be. So even if one of the judges has an ulterior motive, that's why you try to get as many judges as possible.
Correct.
Again, I do not see anything in the rule book that prevents a contestant from judging at another club. But to your point, it's probably not a good idea. And the reason they do this is because there's too many clubs to manage for us. We are district officers. We cannot possibly manage everything that happens at every club. So if a speech contestant at a club wants to judge at another club, there's little that you can do about it because you'll never find out about it. So TMI created this rule that contestants cannot judge beyond the club level. So they cannot be a judge at an area contest or division contest. But if they want to judge at a club contest, there's nothing stopping them. It's not a good idea, but there's nothing stopping them. So I know it's a tough one. And I think we've covered the meaning of the rule, so I think we can move on from here.
Right.
I have a question here.
And I'm sorry, I was going to say there was a point in the chat that's saying, you should just discourage people who are competing from, from thinking about judging. I mean, there's plenty of other roles they can take. Why can't they be a timer? Why can't they be a sergeant of arms? Okay, so I understand that they're going to get emails asking for volunteers, but it's not a good idea for them to judge. So why not do something else?
I think Nilesh has a raised hand. And
I have a question here. My question is, to be a judge at a club, do you have to be a member of the club?
Good question.
Because I was thinking, because if I'm going to judge in two clubs, then I have to be a member in that club. Can I be like, I'm a member of a club A, I can be a judge there?
Not necessarily. There's no rule against it.
So I could judge another club even if I'm not a member.
I think that were correct. You can be adjusted from different club, even though you're not a member of that club. But you belong to the Toastmaster. That means you can able to be adjusted for any club you are invited or nominated to be a judge
Mhm.
for other club.
Okay.
Right. And we're going to talk about judge eligibility in a minute.
Thank you.
But yes, theoretically, judges can come from outside. So, moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk now about all the different types of volunteers that you'll need. Let's start with a list of those volunteers, starting in priority from the contest chair down. And we're going to talk a bit about some of these roles. This table right here, we're not going to go into detail. You can save this and look at it some other time, but it shows the number of volunteers you'll need for each level of contest, starting with the club, area, division, and district. You can see that you see the column for club. You see how those numbers have a little asterisk by them, or a footnote symbol by each of those numbers. What that means is that it's optional. You can see the footnote at the bottom of the slide saying, unless impractical. What that means is that it gives clubs the authority to be flexible. And those numbers are not mandatory for clubs. However, at the area and division level, those numbers are requirements. So, for example, you need 2 timers minimum. You need 2 ballot counters minimum. And we recommend actually more than the minimum because sometimes someone doesn't show up. Let's talk about who should be recruited first. We recommend recruiting the contest chair first because they are responsible for recruiting everyone else. Now, contest chair, like I mentioned, area and division directors should be the contest chair unless you can find someone else to. What does the contest chair do? Well, they recruit all the volunteers, they schedule the prep sessions, they send the invitations, and sure everyone has all the necessary people. So that's a big job. And that's why we recommend you start early and find that person first. Like that, they must be a Toastmaster. The test speaker cannot be candidate for an elected position next year. Does that make sense? Any questions there?
Think I have a question that is at the test speaker. So even though they are paid at the Toastmaster, but according to the TI, they have to be complete of the 2 level to be selected for any role on the contest. Is that correct? Or they don't have to be complete anything, even the 1 level?
I'm sorry, you mean pathways?
Yes.
Or no, contestants need that, not test speakers.
Okay, contestant needed, but not the test speaker. Okay, great, thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Also, the test speech must be it must be a 5 to 7 minute speech, similar to what someone would deliver at a Toastmasters meeting. So it should not be some kind of strange role-playing session or debate or anything like that. So when you are recruiting the speaker, you should ask them if they've been a test speaker somewhere else this year. If so, when was it? Where was it? because if one of your evaluators has heard them before, they have an unfair advantage. Also, please do not reveal the test speaker's name until the day of the contest. That way, none of your evaluators will have an unfair advantage. Now we talk about judging and who can be a judge. The following rules on this slide apply to all judges, including voting judges, tiebreakers, and chief judges. For a club contest, judges need to be, they only need to be a paid member. That's the only requirement. But for area contests and higher, they need to have been a member for at least 6 months, and they must have completed level 2 in pathways, or at least 6 speeches from the old CC manual. And that's for people who were members before pathways came around. All right. Well, judges have to have a little experience, but it's not a lot. It's not difficult to be a judge. Here's a special rule about judges that only applies at the division level. Judges cannot belong to any club that one of the contestants belongs to. And that applies only at the division and district levels. So when you are recruiting for your division contest, you will need to ask people what clubs they belong to, because some people belong to multiple clubs. If you need help getting that information, please contact me. And I will tell you what clubs everyone belongs to. There are some people out there who belong to 5 or 6 clubs. And if they belong to any club that one of the contestants belongs to, they cannot be a judge. That's a special rule for the division level.
Hans, you may want to point out that that includes the chief judge.
Yeah, that's correct. And speaking of chief judges, let's just review what a chief judge is. They do not judge, they don't vote, and they cannot change votes. Instead, they merely supervise the team, which includes the ballot counters and timers. Chief judge also conducts the judge's briefing before the contest. They ensure that ballot and timing reports are valid, and they handle any protests. And at the end of the contest, they deliver the list of winners to the Toastmaster and contest chair. And sometimes you can do that by text message. You can do that by Zoom chat, however you want to do it. The chief judge is also responsible for managing the voting process. And since these are online events, it needs to be someone who's, pretty tech savvy, pretty patient with all that. Club contests, however, do not need to use any kind of online technology to vote. They can vote by text message if they want, or they can vote using slips of paper. However, area and division contests must use online voting. And that is performed by a Google form or a special web page that we have called the Contest Console, which allows people to vote. We will be conducting training on that early next year so that your chief judges can know how to use them. But again, clubs do not have to use them. So that's why we don't train them. What is a tie-breaking judge? Well, The tie-breaking judge is someone who their identity is known only to the chief judge, and they vote only if there's a tie. In fact, they have a special ballot where they rank every contestant, not just the top 3. So it's a person who the chief judge picks in advance, and if there is a tie, their vote is used. If there's no tie, their vote is not used. Now, this is a little more complicated. I get a lot of questions about this. A lot of people ask me, how many judges do I need at my contest? And it depends on what level you are. Club contests, for example, should have at least 5 voting judges plus a tiebreaker unless impractical. They put those words in less impractical to allow some flexibility because they know a lot of clubs are very small. So if your club can only find 3 judges, that's fine. There's nothing preventing it. It's just not a good idea, because the more judges you have, the more accurate the result is. Second bullet point, area contest must have an equal number of judges from each club in the area, or a minimum of 5. So here's what that means in practice. If one of the judges in your area contest is from within your area, then you must get another judge from each of the other clubs as well. So that is why it is easier to get all your judges from outside your area. Because if even one of your judges is from within your area, then you will have to get an equal number of judges from every club in your area. Because think about that. If you have 5 judges and only one of them is from within your area, then that person would have an unfair advantage because they come from a club in your area and you don't have any other judges from within your area. That's an unfair advantage to that club. I know this is kind of complicated, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that it's about balancing the judges across the clubs in your area. And that's why it's easier to try to get them from outside your area so that you don't have to balance them. Does that make sense? Okay, well, I'll move on. Final point about judges is that it's a good idea to recruit more than you need, because one of them might not show up, and if that happens, you would have to scramble at the last minute to find someone else. So we recommend that for each position on your volunteer team that you recruit more than necessary. In fact, you might even want to have a backup test speaker, because sometimes the test speaker cancels. I mean, that's a very important position. And imagine what would happen if they cancel only a couple days before your contest. So I really recommend having a backup plan, like a backup tech host and a backup test speaker, and 6 or 7 judges, not just 5. I only have a couple slides left. So this one is about prep sessions. I think I mentioned this before, where it's a good idea to schedule a prep session at least a couple days before your contest, where you can allow contestants to turn on their video and test their equipment and their microphone to make sure that their speaking area looks good. If desired, your chief judge can go into a breakout room to do some training with their team during that prep session. The voting judges do not need to attend the prep session because their responsibilities are not very complicated, and the chief judge can simply train them by email. The chief judge would simply send the ballot to the judges in an email, along with some brief explanations about how to use it. So again, this is something that the contest chair should do and put on the calendar at least 2 days before the contest. One final point regarding your volunteer team is that it's a good idea to have a communication method so that people can contact each other in case there are problems. We recommend using WhatsApp or a group text message that would allow contest officials to, reach out if there are problems during the contest. And the second bullet point is about judges. Please remember that they are supposed to be confidential. Please do not reveal their identities to anyone. For example, when you are sending the contest agenda, please put the judges' names in the blind copy because we don't want anyone to know who they are. And when they log into the Zoom meeting, do not rename them with judge number 1, judge number 2. Just leave their names as they are because we don't want anyone to know they are a judge. And that concludes my part. Are there any questions? I see one question here in the chat. It says, it's saying that the District 57 Speakers Bureau is a great resource for test speakers. And that's a good point. If you are struggling to find a test speaker, we have an organization called the Speakers Bureau, and they are great speakers who are willing to speak anywhere. You can also get a test speaker from outside the district. We've had a lot of luck pulling in people from outside the district to speak, to make sure they are Toastmasters and that they are currently paid members. All right, well, if there are no questions about my part, I will, Venkat will move on to the next part.
Thank you, Hans. Could you go to the next slide? Defensive planning. What do I mean by that? It's a lot of what Hans talked about, trying to be not sensitive to people not showing up. But I want to dwell a little more on that. Next slide, please. Okay, we saw this slide before, but I want to focus on that now. And let's take an example of area contest or division contest. That's the focus of this training. I want to be a little more dramatic, so let's take a division contest. You need to have 7 minimum voting judges. Replace the number with 5 if you're an area director, but the rest of the requirements are the same. You need 1 minimum contest chair, 1 contest toastmaster, and so on and so forth. So what does this mean? As Hans said, you should aim to have more than the minimum in every category. Why is that? Because every person in the role that's described is needed to make the contest successful. and compliant. Because even if one ballot counter can do the job, it's not a good contest. It's not a valid contest. You don't have two ballot counters. If you only recruited two ballot counters, one of them didn't show up, you don't have a contest. You don't want that. Therefore, let's take an example of what I did when I ran the division contest last year. I made sure I was the contest chair, of course, so I didn't have to do a co-contest chair. You may want to do that. If you are recruiting someone to be a contest chair, you may want to be the co-contest chair with that person. Initially, dividing the responsibility not equally, but knowing what all needs to be done, so that if your selected contest chair doesn't show up, you can step in and do the job. And contest Toastmaster, it's important to have an alternate. It's important to have an alternate for Sergeant at Arms. If Sergeant at Arms doesn't show up, it can be not end of the world because somebody else can step in. But everything will depend on preparation. People cannot just step in cold and do the job. It won't look like a contest then. So you need to have 2 staff sergeant at arms, 3 timers, 3 ballot counters, and so on and so forth. What I did was, some of these roles, you can actually have 3 timers. You can divvy up the responsibility. You can have 3 ballot counters, no problem. But what do you do with 2 sergeant at arms? Remember, area and division contests are generally at the same event, one after the other. So you can decide to have 1 sergeant at arms for the first contest and a different sergeant at arms for the second contest. That way you are protecting against failure. If one of them doesn't show up, the same person can do both. And similarly, voting judges, tie-breaking judge. And you need to have 7 minimum in division contest, 5 minimum in area contest. You shoot for 2 more. Now, I did 9 in division contest, and you should probably aim to have 7 for area contest for the following reason. It was really good that I did that because one of the judges dropped out. So it became 8. And the tie-breaking judge, if they cannot show up, you can then I could have then made one of the 8 to become the tie-breaking judge and still be compliant. So you need to think about where all you can reallocate resources. Test speaker, backup, that's a tough one because if somebody agrees to be a backup for the test speaker, they may not have a chance to speak at all. And what can they do? If the day arrives and test speaker actually shows up, the backup test speaker cannot be reallocated to anything else except if they qualify and are willing, except they can be a judge. And you need to think about how you can reward your volunteers with something to do rather than wasting their time waiting for doing something at a contest and not having a chance to do. Alternates should be kept in mind, and the reason for the alternates will be increased because if you contribute to a contest, you get OATM points. That's something that they may be going for. I don't know if you are familiar with Outstanding Achievement Toastmaster award that this District 57 routinely, gives out. So if somebody wants to become volunteer at your contest, they don't have a chance and they have wasted their time and they can't earn the points. So you need to think about how all you can reassign personnel so that you are protected from a failing contest, and you can also make sure everybody has a job to do. I think I've said enough about that. Any questions on that? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, resources. Next slide. We have some resources. Once the PDF of the slide deck is sent to you, all of these will be live links so that you can download the rule book if you haven't downloaded by that time. And if you haven't reserved your contest date, that's a link for you to do that. And the content, the resource page is, it has a lot of information. It's work in progress. Some of the information is yet to come, but it already has a bit of information. Next slide. And these are links you can use that are provided by Toastmasters International. They are all about contests and different aspects of them. These are good resources. Next slide. Okay. I don't know how many of you actually attended DECM on Saturday. We promised that we will cover some interesting questions to make sure you understand what's involved in running a contest. So I'm treating these questions as quiz now. You have gone through the presentation that Hans basically gave, and I'm going to ask the same questions that I promised to cover, and I want to see if people answer them. Next slide, please. Which contest role should the contest chair try to fill first? Any answer?
Context chair.
Area contest.
Chief judge.
Look at the question. Yeah, exactly. It is true that contest chair has to be identified first. That's not what the question is asking. Which contest role should the contest chair try to fill first?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so chief judge is the right answer. Next slide, please. Can anyone sign up to become an evaluation contestant?
Yes.
Yes.
Only if they're a paid member in good
Paid.
standing.
And then they had to be complete the 2 level.
No,
of
not
the
for the
pathway.
evaluation. Not for the evaluation contest.
Oh,
I
not
think-
for the evaluation.
Yeah,
Only
only
for the speed contestant.
I think the answers are all generally okay, but there's one additional requirement that's not been mentioned. Anyone noticed? Any paid up Toastmaster from a club in good standing.
Good standing.
Good standing is for the club. So there are 2 constraints. The Toastmaster has to be paid up, and the club that they represent has to be in good standing. Then they can be an evaluation contestant. Next slide, please.
I see.
Can someone with no Pathways project completion sign up to become an international speech contestant?
No.
No.
Yes, if they've reached the appropriate level in the prior
Is
level
it
system.
still valid? Is the prior the CC still valid?
So I think they have to meet all 3 critical, requirement. First thing, the club level had to qualify, right? To be at least for a member to be 16 for the club.
Right.
And
but
also
for-
as well, that first one, right? And then the second one is that the member have to be complete the 2 pathway to be signed up for international Toastmaster contestant. and
or a
also
DTM.
then
unless
also
they have
that
a DTM.
contestant. Yep, either or the DTM, because in the past the people didn't have the pathway. Yes.
So yeah, so DTM from the previous the legacy program.
Correct.
And they didn't.
That's the real answer, because
Right. There's no they cannot use the legacy program. They must be either level 2 or a DTM.
Right.
Oh, right now they cannot use that. I see.
The only
they could have gotten their DTM by doing the legacy program, correct?
that's okay.
Right.
That is okay. That's the real trick. They don't. Okay. The answer to this is yes. If they earned their DTM using the legacy program and refuses to do anything on pathway, they are still eligible because they are a DTM.
Okay.
That's the real answer. And it's a very hypothetical thing, because nobody in the right mind would earn a DTM and would do nothing in pathways. But this is just to bring that thing to light. The rules just say you have to be either a DTM or two levels in pathways. Okay, next one, please. Can a contestant also serve as a ballot counter?
I can say yes.
as long as it's not at the same contest.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
I agree.
Actually, there is a caveat to this. A contestant, I can go through some subtleties here. The contestant did not win the previous level, but is an alternate. Once in the current contest, let's say in the area contest, they place second, and we are now at a division contest. The first place person is eligible to go up to the division contest. Second place winner is an alternate. So they are conditional contestant. They cannot be a ballot counter. But if the first place contestant shows up, that means it eliminates the second place as a contestant at all at the division contest. But technically, they are no longer a contestant. So then they can be employed as a ballot counter.
So the only thing that will be qualify a ballot counter if the contestant not winning in the contest, any contest prior.
No.
Before
We are
that.
going in different tiers, right? Club contest, area contest, and all that. So we are focusing on some level of contest. If the person we are talking about did not win the previous tier, but placed second, that means they can be potentially participating in this tier too, if the first place person doesn't show up. In that case, they are a contestant in this tier. But if the first place person actually shows up, then this second place person is no longer a contestant. Subtleties there. I think that's all I had for the sample question. Next slide. Any other questions you may have from any part of the presentation?
So any advice for the chief justice? So if I am an area director from division D area 26, right? With the district 57. So that means I can able to invite different chief justice in a different district, or should I invite in the same district also as well?
It can be outside.
Yeah, you are welcome to find any chief justice from anywhere. as long as they qualify according to their requirements.
And then how can you monitor them to be qualified to be a chief judges? So that means a contact hand can provide that information to be confirmed.
Well,
I think
judges judges of any type, a voting judge, chief judge, or tiebreaker judge must be a paid member for at least 6 months, and they must have either level 2 or the first 6 speeches of the competent communicator manual. And if they are from a different district, then it might be challenging to verify that. But I think the Toastmasters website has a tool that will allow you to check the educational credentials of any member.
Can you able to give us a little bit demo how to check like who be qualified to be any role for the contest? Just a quick demo, like where should we go?
actually you can stop the sharing.
Yes, please.
Unless you want to use the sharing to do some demo.
Oh, you want me to do that?
No, I'm talking to Hans.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think we should put that in a screenshot and send it to everyone. We'll put together a screenshot.
Great.
And send it to the directors.
It's really helpful. So that means we don't have to ask you again so many emails to be looking through who they qualify, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
If you stop sharing, you can see everybody.
Oh. Okay, yeah, I'll put a screenshot together because it's been a long time since I used that tool. And I believe it only works within the district or division that you belong to.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be challenging to verify someone from outside the district. You might, I'm not sure how you would do that. You would have to ask them to submit proof from, I don't know, maybe in the form of an email from their district director or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, keep in mind that the chief judge or any judge's qualification, including 6 speeches from CC, only works if they have been members prior to Pathways rollout. The reason that's important is that when Pathways was rolled out, we had both the programs in action for 3 years. So if they joined between February 7th, 2017 and I believe June 30th of 2020, that's no good. Anything else?
No.
If not, I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you all for joining. And I know some of the people had to leave, but I will be preparing the package and sending an email out to everybody who attended.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.